The stars had always been quiet. For thousands of years, humanity looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. They built telescopes, sent probes into deep space, and listened for signals from distant worlds. But the universe never answered. What humanity did not know was that the universe had been watching them all along. In the cold emptiness between galaxies, the Valari Dominion ruled over 40 star systems. They were an ancient race of reptilian creatures who had conquered countless worlds. Their ships were massive, their weapons were powerful, and their pride was endless. For 300 years they had watched Earth through hidden probes. They studied human broadcasts, learned human languages, and came to a simple conclusion. Humans were dangerous, not because they were strong. The Valari had seen stronger species. Not because they were smart. The Valari had met smarter beings. Humans were dangerous because they never stopped fighting. They fought each other over land, over beliefs, over resources. They created weapons of terrible destruction and used them on their own kind. The Valari High Council looked at humanity and saw a species that would one day spread across the stars like a plague of violence. So they made a decision. They would destroy humanity before humanity could destroy others, Admiral. Ko Yang was 63 years old when the invasion began. He had served in the Korean Space Defense Force for 40 years, spending most of his career on lunar base Sejong. It was a quiet posting. Nothing ever happened on the moon. Ko Yang spent his days monitoring empty space and dreaming of retirement. On the morning of March 15, 2147, his monitors detected something strange. A fleet of unknown vessels had entered the solar system near Jupiter. They were moving fast, faster than any human ship could travel. Ko Yang counted them carefully. There were over 200 ships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. He sent an emergency message to Earth Command. Then he sent another, and another. For 6 hours, politicians argued about what to do. Some said it was a mistake. Some said it was a hoax. Some said they should wait and see. While they argued, the Valari fleet reached Earth. Commander Torvin stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked down at the blue planet below. It was beautiful, he admitted. A shame it had to be destroyed, but the High Council had given their orders. Torvin always followed orders. He gave the command to fire. Captain Park Hannah was 28 years old. She was a fighter pilot stationed on the orbital platform above the Pacific Ocean. She had joined the military because she loved to fly, loved the feeling of freedom that came with soaring through the stars. She had never fired her weapons at a real enemy. That changed in an instant. The first Valari beams struck Seoul, Tokyo, and New York at the same moment. Park Hannah watched through her cockpit window as brilliant columns of light fell from the sky. Where they touched the ground, everything vanished. Buildings, streets, people. Her family lived in Seoul. Her mother, her father, her little brother. She tried to call them, but there was no answer. There would never be an answer. The order came to scramble all fighters. Park Hannah launched into battle alongside 47 other pilots. They were brave. They were skilled. They were completely outmatched. Valari fighters swarmed around them like angry insects. One by one, her friends died in bright flashes of light. Park Hannah fought with everything she had. She destroyed 3 enemy fighters before her own ship was hit. She crashed on the lunar surface. Broken, but alive. Only 7 pilots survived that first battle. On Earth, the horror continued. The Valari bombarded every major city, every military base, every center of power. Millions died in the first hour. Tens of millions died by the end of the first day. Commander Torvin broadcast a message to the survivors. His voice was cold and without emotion. "People of Earth," he said, "your resistance is meaningless. Surrender now, and some of you will be allowed to live as servants of the Dominion. Fight, and you will all die. You have 1 day to decide." Deep beneath Mount Paektu in Korea, Dr. Kim Tae heard the message through crackling speakers. He was a quantum physicist, a man who had spent his life studying theories that most people could not understand. For years, he had worked on experimental weapons that the military considered too dangerous to develop. Now, suddenly, they wanted results. A general appeared on his screen. The man looked exhausted and terrified. "Dr. Kim," he said, "whatever you are working on, we need it now. Can you help us?" Kim Tae looked at his research notes. His theories were incomplete. His technology was untested. It could work, or it could fail completely. There was no way to know without trying. "I will try," he said simply. It was all he could promise. Around the world, something unexpected was happening. Humanity was not surrendering. Despite the death, despite the destruction, despite the hopelessness of their situation, humans were not giving up. They retreated into underground bunkers, into hidden military bases, into caves and tunnels and anywhere the Valari could not reach. They gathered their remaining weapons. They organized their surviving soldiers. They prepared to fight. The surviving leaders of Earth's nations met through secure communication channels. For the first time in human history, they agreed on something. There would be no surrender. There would be no negotiation. There would only be war. General Lee Soo, stern woman who had survived the destruction of the Asian Defense Command, was chosen to lead the unified human resistance. She stood before a camera and broadcast a message to the stars. Her voice was calm, but filled with cold fury. To the Valari Dominion and all who supported this attack, she said, "You have struck the first blow. You have killed millions of our people. You believe we are weak. You believe we will break? You are wrong. From this moment forward, humanity is at war with you. Not a war for survival, a war for vengeance. We will not stop until every one of you has paid for what you have done. This is not a threat. This is a promise." On the Valari flagship, Commander Torvin watched the broadcast. He laughed. These primitive creatures thought they could challenge the Dominion. They had no ships, no technology, no hope. Their defiance was amusing, nothing more. He ordered his officers to begin the ground invasion. Soon, the last humans would be in chains. And this foolish talk of war would be forgotten. Torvin did not understand what he had awakened. He did not know that humanity had spent its entire history fighting wars. He did not realize that the same violence the Valari feared was now focused entirely on them, in bunkers around the world. Humans sharpened their weapons and made their plans. In orbit, Park Hannah recovered from her injuries and swore revenge for her family. In his underground laboratory, Dr. Kim Tae worked without sleep, pushing the boundaries of science to create something that could hurt the invaders. The Valari had wanted to prevent humanity from becoming a threat. Instead, they had created the greatest enemy the galaxy would ever know. 3 months had passed since the world burned. The surface of Earth was scarred with wounds that would take centuries to heal. Great cities had become graveyards. Rivers ran black with ash. The sky was gray with smoke and dust that blocked the sun. But beneath the destruction, humanity survived. General Lee Soo stood in the command center of the resistance base, deep inside a mountain in South America. Thousands of soldiers, scientists, and civilians had gathered here, building a new home in the darkness underground. They had electricity from hidden generators, food from underground farms, and weapons from secret factories that worked day and night. Lee Soo looked at the reports on her screen. The Valari had occupied every major city on Earth. They believed the war was over. They had stopped searching for survivors. They had become comfortable. That was their first mistake. Captain Park Hannah flew through the clouds like a ghost. Her squadron, which she called the Ghost Wings, consisted of 12 pilots flying stolen and modified aircraft. They attacked Valari supply convoys and vanished before the enemy could respond. They struck patrol ships and disappeared into the mountains. They were everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Tonight, their target was a Valari fuel depot in what used to be Germany. Park Hannah watched it through her targeting display. The aliens had grown careless. They left only a small guard force to protect their precious fuel. "All wings, attack formation," Park Hannah said into her radio. "Hit them fast, hit them hard, and do not stop until everything is burning." Her squadron dove from the clouds like falling stars. Missiles streaked toward the depot. Explosions lit up the night. Valari soldiers ran in confusion, unable to understand how humans could still be fighting. By the time enemy reinforcements arrived, Park Hannah and her pilots were already gone. Flying low through mountain valleys where sensors could not track them, these attacks were small. They did not win the war. But they proved something important. Humanity was not broken. Humanity was still dangerous. Deep beneath Mount Pyecto, Dr. Kim Tae had not slept in 3 days. His laboratory was filled with strange machines and glowing screens covered with equations that would confuse the greatest scientists on Earth, but Kim Tae was not interested in theory anymore. He needed results. For months, he had studied pieces of crashed Valari ships. He learned how their engines worked, how their weapons fired, how their shields protected them. And in that study, he found a weakness. The Valari used exotic matter to power their technology. It was a substance that did not exist naturally, created through processes humanity could barely understand. But exotic matter was unstable. Under the right conditions, it could be destabilized. Turned from a source of power into a source of destruction. Kim Tae called his invention the Cascade Disruptor. It was a simple device, small enough to fit in a missile. When it detonated near a Valari ship, it would create a wave of energy that made exotic matter explode. The first test happened over the Pacific Ocean. A Valari battlecruiser was patrolling the coastline, hunting for human survivors. A single missile, launched from a hidden submarine, streaked toward it. The Valari did not even try to shoot it down. Human missiles could not penetrate their shields. This missile did not need to penetrate. The Cascade Disruptor activated. For a moment, the battlecruiser glowed with strange light, then it tore itself apart from the inside out. Pieces of alien metal rained down into the ocean for 10 minutes in the Resistance Command Center. General Lee Soo watched the satellite footage. A smile crossed her face for the first time in months. The enemy could be hurt. The enemy could be killed. The Valari occupation force panicked. Their ships, which they believed were invincible, were now targets. Commander Torvin ordered all vessels to increase security, to watch for human attacks, to never let their guard down. But his fleet was large and spread across the planet. He could not protect everything. While the military fought, Specialist Choi Mina waged a different kind of war. She was an intelligence officer, a woman who had spent her career listening to enemy communications. Now, she listened to the VAR. It had taken her months to learn their language. It was strange and complex, full of sounds that human throats were not designed to make. But Choi Mina was patient. She recorded every transmission, studied every signal, and slowly began to understand. What she discovered changed everything. The Valari had not attacked Earth on their own. They had been sent by something called the Galactic Council, an assembly of alien species that governed this region of space. The Council had voted on humanity's fate. They had looked at human history, at human wars, at human weapons, and decided that humanity was too violent to be allowed to reach the stars. The attack on Earth was not an invasion. It was an execution. Choi Mina brought her findings to General Lee Soo. The general read the translated documents in silence. When she finished, her eyes were cold with fury. "They tried to kill us because we fight too much," she said quietly. "Then let us show them how we fight." Lieutenant Baek Jin was a different kind of soldier. Before the invasion, he had studied marine biology at a university in Busan. He loved the ocean, loved its creatures, loved its mysteries. When the Valari came, they destroyed that ocean, poisoned that water, killed those creatures. Baek Jin joined the special forces not for honor or duty, but for revenge. His team specialized in ground operations. They moved through ruined cities like shadows, striking Valari patrols and vanishing into the rubble. They were masters of close combat, of ambush tactics, of making the enemy afraid to walk on human ground. Tonight, Baek Jin led his team on their most dangerous mission yet. A Valari ground installation near the ruins of Paris held 3 high-ranking officers. General Lee Soo wanted them alive. The assault was quick and brutal. Baek Jin's soldiers moved through the installation with terrible efficiency. They killed guards silently, disabled alarms expertly, and cornered the officers in their command room. The Valari tried to fight. They were strong. But strength meant nothing against soldiers who had lost everything they loved. When morning came, 3 Valari officers sat in chains in the resistance base. They were the first aliens ever captured by humans. They were terrified. The interrogation lasted for days. The Valari learned that humans could be creative in their cruelty. They told their captors everything they knew. About Valari tactics, Valari weaknesses, Valari fears. Commander Torvin received reports of the missing officers. Then he received reports of more attacks, more destroyed ships, more dead soldiers. His occupation was failing. His invincible fleet was bleeding. He sent a message to the Valari homeworld far across the galaxy. His words were grim and worried. The humans are not surrendering. They are adapting. They are learning our technology and using it against us. They fight without honor, without mercy, without fear. Send reinforcements immediately. If we do not crush them soon, I fear they will crush us. In the High Council chamber of the Valari Dominion, ancient leaders who had conquered 100 worlds read Torvin's message. For the first time in 1,000 years, they felt something unexpected. They felt afraid in the darkness beneath the earth. Humanity prepared for the next phase of the war. Dr. Kim Tae worked on new weapons. Park Hannah trained new pilots. Choi Mina decoded new secrets. Baek Jin planned new raids, and General Lee Su looked at maps of the stars. Dreaming of the day when human ships would sail among them, the Valari had come to exterminate humanity instead. They had taught humanity how to fight among the stars. It was a lesson they would soon regret. 1 year after the invasion, humanity was ready to strike back. On the dark side of the moon, hidden from Valari sensors, human workers had built something impossible. Using stolen alien technology, captured equipment, and their own desperate ingenuity, they had constructed a fleet. These ships were not beautiful. They were rough, ugly things, made from salvaged materials, and held together with hope and hatred. But they could fly. They could fight. And they could win. Admiral Ko-young stood on the bridge of the flagship, which the crew had named Vengeance. He was older now, his hair completely white, his face lined with exhaustion and grief. He had lost his wife and son in the first attack. He had spent the past year preparing for this moment. All ships report ready, his officer said. The fleet awaits your command. Ko-young looked at the viewport. Beyond the moon's shadow, he could see Earth, his home, his wounded, suffering home. The Valari still orbited it, still controlled its surface, still believed they had one. They were wrong. Signal all ships, Ko-young said. Begin Operation Thunder. Today, we take back our world. The human fleet emerged from the darkness like a wave of fury. 23 warships, over 100 fighters, and thousands of soldiers ready to die for their planet. The Valari detected them too late. Their comfortable occupation had made them slow. Captain Park Hannah led the fighter assault. She was no longer the young pilot who had survived the first battle by luck. She was a legend now, a warrior whose name was whispered in Valari nightmares. Her call sign had changed. The aliens called her the Death Wind, and they fled when they saw her coming. All fighters follow me, Park Hannah said. We break their formation, we destroy their command ships, and we do not stop until Earth is free. Her squadron dove into the Valari blockade. These were not the same fighters that had died in the first battle. These were ships built with Valari technology, armed with cascade disruptors, and piloted by humans who had nothing left to lose. The battle lasted 3 hours. It was the most violent engagement in human history. Valari ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Human ships burned and fell, their pilots dying with curses on their lips. But for every human vessel destroyed, 5 Valari ships were annihilated. Park Hannah personally destroyed 47 enemy ships that day. She flew through fields of debris and fire, her hands steady, her eyes cold. She thought of her family as she killed. She remembered their faces as she watched aliens burn. When the last Valari blockade ship tried to flee, she caught it and tore it apart. The Battle of the Broken Ring, as historians would later call it, ended with human victory. The orbital space around Earth belonged to humanity once more, but the war was not over. The surface still needed to be liberated. General Li Su personally led the assault on Seoul. She had chosen this city deliberately. It was where the Valari had established their main ground command. It was also the place where millions of Koreans had died in the first attack. She wanted the enemy to know that humans remembered their dead. The ground battle was different from the space battle. It was slower, more personal, more brutal. Human soldiers fought street by street, building by building, room by room. The Valari were strong and their weapons were powerful, but they did not understand urban warfare. They had conquered planets by destroying them from orbit. They had never faced an enemy that dug in and refused to surrender. Lieutenant Baek Jin and his Special Forces unit led the most dangerous missions. They moved through the ruined city like ghosts, appearing behind enemy lines, striking at critical targets, and disappearing before the Valari could respond. Every night, alien officers died in their beds. Every morning, Valari soldiers woke up afraid. After 2 weeks of fighting, the enemy was broken. Commander Torvin, who had led the invasion, tried to retreat to his command ship. Baek Jin was waiting for him. The capture of Torvin was quick and violent. The alien commander, who had ordered the deaths of millions, was dragged through the streets of Seoul in chains. Human survivors watched him pass. They did not cheer. They simply watched, their eyes filled with cold satisfaction. General Li Su met Torvin in a ruined building that had once been a school. She looked at the creature who had destroyed her world. "You thought we were weak," she said calmly. "You thought we would break. You were wrong. And now you will watch as we take everything from you, just as you took everything from us." Torvin said nothing. For the first time in his long life, he had no words. While the battles raged, Dr. Kimtae unveiled his second great invention. He called it the Translation Gate, a device that could send signals instantly across any distance. Using this technology, humanity could communicate with every corner of the galaxy. General Li Su stood before the broadcast device. Behind her, the human flag flew over the liberated streets of Seoul. Around her, soldiers who had survived a year of hell stood at attention. Her message was sent to every species in the galactic community. Her words were translated into 1,000 languages and broadcast to 1 trillion listeners. "To all who can hear this message," she said, "we are humanity. 1 year ago, you voted to destroy us. You sent your servants to kill us. You believed we would die quietly. We did not die. We fought. We survived. We conquered. And now we are coming for you. To those who attacked us, know this. We will find you. We will destroy you. We will make you pay for every life you took. To those who did not attack us, we offer peace. But if you stand in our way, you will share the fate of our enemies." Humanity remembers. Humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, alien leaders watched in shock. The primitives they had tried to eliminate had somehow survived. Not only survived, but fought back. And now they had ships, weapons, and the will to use them. In the council chambers of distant empires, emergency meetings were called. Species that had considered themselves safe suddenly felt vulnerable. The humans were coming. What would they do when they arrived? Admiral Koyong stood on the bridge of the Vengeance as it pursued the last fleeing Valari ship. His orders from General Li Su were clear. Let none escape. Let none carry warning to the rest of the Dominion. He watched as human missiles caught the fleeing vessel and tore it apart. Then he looked at the stars beyond, the vast darkness where enemies waited. "Set course for the Valari homeworld," he ordered. "The war of liberation is over. The war of conquest begins now." Behind him, his crew cheered. They were tired, wounded, and many had lost everyone they loved. But they were also filled with a terrible purpose. Humanity had been attacked without warning, without mercy, without justice. Now humanity would show the galaxy what happened to those who tried to destroy them. Earth was free. But the real war was just beginning, and humanity was ready. 5 years had passed since the invasion. The galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The Valari Dominion, which had once ruled 40 star systems, no longer existed. Human fleets had swept through their territory like a storm of fire. Valari worlds burned. Valari cities fell. Valari peoples scattered to distant corners of the galaxy, refugees from the empire they had once ruled with pride. But humanity was not satisfied with just the Valari. The Galactic Council met in emergency session on a neutral space station at the edge of known space. Over 300 species sent representatives, each one more worried than the last. The Great Hall was filled with creatures of every shape and size. Some had scales, some had wings, some had tentacles, and some had forms that human eyes could barely understand. They had gathered for one reason: to decide what to do about humanity. The Valari representative spoke first. He was a thin, defeated creature, his scales dull, and his eyes filled with exhaustion. He was the last surviving member of the Valari High Council, a refugee living on borrowed time. "You do not understand what we face," he said, his voice trembling. "The humans are not like other species. They do not stop. They do not rest. They do not negotiate. We killed millions of them, and they responded by killing billions of us. They hold grudges across generations. Their children are raised with stories of our crimes. They will not stop until every species that voted against them is destroyed." The chamber erupted in argument. Some demanded war. Some demanded peace. Some demanded that the humans be stopped before they grew even stronger. Some demanded that the council surrender immediately. In the middle of the chaos, a door opened. Every creature in the room fell silent. Ambassador Yunari walked into the Galactic Council. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple uniform without decoration or metal. She looked like someone's grandmother, not the representative of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. She was absolutely terrifying. "Good morning," she said politely. "I hope I am not interrupting." No one responded. They were too afraid to speak. Yunari took her place at the center of the chamber. She looked around at the assembled species, her expression unreadable. "I have been sent by the United Human Government to deliver a message," she said. "It is a simple message, so please listen carefully. Humanity offers peace to any species that did not vote for our extinction. We have obtained the records of that vote. We know exactly which species supported the attack and which species opposed it. Those who opposed it have nothing to fear from us. Those who supported it should be very afraid." She paused and smiled gently. "We've also brought something to share with the council." A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed the voting records from 5 years ago, when the council had decided to destroy humanity. Every vote was visible. Every species was named. The chamber exploded into panic. Representatives shouted at each other, blaming their neighbors, denying their votes, begging for mercy. Yunari stood calmly in the center of the storm, watching without expression. "Humanity remembers," she said softly. "And humanity is patient." Far across the galaxy, Fleet Admiral Park Hanna led the 3rd Expeditionary Force against the Morok Collective. The Morok were a hive mind species, billions of creatures controlled by a single consciousness. They had voted enthusiastically for humanity's destruction. They had believed themselves invincible. Park Hanna proved them wrong in 17 days. Her strategy was simple and brutal. The Morok mind was centralized, connected through a network of biological transmitters on their homeworld. Park Hanna did not waste time conquering their colonies. She simply drove straight for their home, destroying every ship that stood in her way. When she reached the Morok homeworld, she gave them one chance to surrender. They refused. They believed their numbers would protect them. They were wrong. Park Hanna's fleet bombarded the biological transmitters from orbit. Without their connection to the hive mind, the Morok became animals, unable to think or organize. Within hours, their civilization collapsed. Within days, they were conquered. Park Hanna stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the Morok world burn. She felt no satisfaction. She felt no joy. She only felt the cold emptiness that had filled her heart since she watched her family die 5 years ago. "Send word to Earth," she said. "The Morak Collective no longer exists." Back on Earth, Director Kim Tae led the Human Advanced Research Division. His laboratories covered entire cities, filled with the brightest minds humanity could gather. They studied alien technology, developed new weapons, and pushed the boundaries of what was possible. His latest project was the most ambitious yet. He called it the Life Extension Program. Using medical technology stolen from a dozen alien species, he was finding ways to extend human lifespans. The first tests were promising. Humans might soon live for hundreds of years. This terrified the galaxy even more than human weapons. A species that held grudges for generations would now have generations that lasted for centuries. Crimes that might be forgotten by short-lived species would be remembered by humans for endless years. Young Captain Shin Yoon represented a different kind of hope. She was born after the invasion, part of the first generation that had never known a time when humanity was not at war. She was 22 years old, brilliant, fearless, and curious about what lay beyond the edges of known space. Her ship, the Discovery, was the first human vessel sent into uncharted territory. Her mission was not conquest, but exploration. General Lee Soo believed that humanity needed more than vengeance to survive. They needed purpose. They needed to become more than warriors. Shin Yoon traveled to places no human had ever seen. She discovered new stars, new worlds, and new mysteries. She also discovered something else. Evidence of another civilization, far larger and far older than anything in the known galaxy. But that was a discovery for another time. The Galactic Council voted on a resolution to unite against humanity. It was Thai, our last hope. If every species worked together, perhaps they could stop the human advance. The vote failed. Too many species remembered what happened to those who attacked Earth first. Too many species had seen the Valari Dominion crumble to dust. Too many species had watched the Morak Collective die in days. They were not willing to risk the same fate. One by one, alien ambassadors approached Yunari. They brought gifts. They brought apologies. They brought desperate offers of friendship. They would do anything to avoid becoming humanity's next target. Yunari accepted their offers politely. She promised peace to those who had not voted against humanity. She was kind and gracious and terrifying. When she returned to Earth, she brought with her treaties of peace, trade agreements, and promises of eternal friendship from over 100 species. The galaxy was learning to respect humanity. General Lee Soo, a supreme commander of all human forces, reviewed the treaties with satisfaction. They were winning. Not just battles, but the larger war for survival. "We are becoming what we fought," she said quietly one night. Looking at maps of conquered worlds, her aide looked at her with concern. "Is that wrong, Supreme Commander?" Lee Soo thought for a long moment. "Perhaps," she said, "but we are alive. We are strong, and no one will ever try to destroy us again." Outside her window, human starships patrolled the skies of Earth. They were guardians now, protectors of a species that had learned the hardest lesson the universe could teach. Strength was the only thing the galaxy respected, and humanity had become very, very strong. 20 years had passed since the day the sky burned. The universe had been transformed. Humanity ruled over 200 star systems. Their fleets patrolled trade routes that stretched across the galaxy. Their colonies thrived on worlds that had never known human footsteps. Their technology had advanced beyond anything the old Earth could have imagined. They had become the most powerful force in known space. And finally, the war was ending. Supreme Commander Lee Soo stood before a gathering of millions. She was old now, her hair white and her face lined with decades of fighting. But her eyes were still sharp, her voice still strong. She had led humanity from the ashes of invasion to the heights of galactic dominance. Now she would lead them into a new era. "Citizens of humanity," she said. 20 years ago, we were attacked without warning. Millions died. Our cities burned. Our world was nearly destroyed. We were told to surrender or face extinction. We chose a third option. We chose to fight. The crowd listened in silence. Many of them had been children when the invasion began. They had grown up hearing stories of the war, of the heroes who saved humanity, of the enemies who tried to destroy them. Today, I announced the end of major military operations. Every species that voted for our destruction has been defeated. Some surrendered. Some were conquered. Some no longer exist. The conditions for peace were simple. Acknowledge your crimes. Promise eternal non-aggression. Accept the new order. Those who agreed are now our partners. Those who refused are gone. Li Su paused and looked at the faces before her. Young and old, from every nation that had once divided humanity. Now they stood together, united by shared suffering and shared triumph. We have one, she said, but we must not become what we defeated. We must not let vengeance consume us forever. The war is over. Now we must learn to build. The crowd erupted in cheers. Fireworks lit the sky above the rebuilt cities of Earth. Music played and people danced in streets that had once been rubble. For the first time in 20 years, humanity celebrated not a battle won, but a war ended. Fleet Admiral Park Hannah did not attend the celebration. She had returned to Seoul, to the place where her family had died. A memorial had been built there, a wall of names stretching for kilometers. Every person who died in the first attack was listed. Millions of names carved in black stone. Park Hannah found her family. Her mother, her father, her little brother. She touched their names with trembling fingers. I kept my promise, she whispered. I made them pay. Every one of them. I hope you can rest now. She stood there for a long time, alone with her memories. She had spent 20 years fighting. She had killed more enemies than she could count. She had become the most feared warrior in the galaxy. But she had never stopped being the young pilot who lost everything she loved. When she finally left the memorial, she did not return to the military. She had given enough. It was time for someone else to guard the stars. Director Kim Tae unveiled his final gift to humanity at a ceremony attended by leaders from across human space. He called it the Genesis Project. It was technology that could transform barren rocks into living worlds. It could create oceans from ice, atmospheres from nothing, and gardens from dust. With this technology, Kim Tae said, humanity no longer needs to conquer. We can create. We can build new homes instead of taking them from others. We can expand without war. The Genesis Project changed everything. Colonies that had been limited to hostile environments could now thrive. New worlds could be created where none existed before. Humanity could grow without limit. Kim Tae was offered countless honors for his work. He refused them all. He returned to his laboratory and continued working. There were always more problems to solve, more mysteries to understand. He had saved humanity with weapons. Now he would help them flourish with creation. Ambassador Yunari was elected as the first president of the United Human Territories. It was a position she had never sought, but could not refuse. The people needed someone they trusted, someone who had proven their wisdom and their strength. Under her leadership, humanity began the slow transformation from warriors to builders. Trade expanded. Alliances strengthened. Former enemies became partners. The galaxy, which had once tried to destroy humanity, now depended on them for stability and protection. President Yunari held meetings with alien ambassadors every day. She was patient and kind, but everyone who met her remembered one thing. She was the woman who had walked into the Galactic Council and made 300 species afraid. Her kindness was a choice, not a weakness. Admiral Shin Yun, no longer young, but still curious, continued her explorations at the edge of known space. Her discoveries had added dozens of systems to human territory. She had found ruins of ancient civilizations, resources beyond imagination, and wonders that defied explanation. One day, her sensors detected something unusual. A ship, but not like any ship she had ever seen. It was massive, elegant, and completely alien. The ship made contact. Its occupants spoke in a language that no translation device could understand. But Shin Yun was patient. She worked with her crew for weeks, slowly building communication, slowly learning to speak. The newcomers were from another galaxy. They had traveled for thousands of years, crossing the vast emptiness between star clusters. They had come to explore, to learn, to understand. They asked a single question: who rules this galaxy? Xinyun smiled. She had been born after the invasion, raised in a time of war, and grown up watching humanity conquer the stars. She knew exactly what to say. Humanity does, she answered. And we earned it. The newcomers studied humanity with great interest. They learned about the invasion, the war, the conquest. They learned about human determination, human creativity, human fury. They learned that humanity had been underestimated once, and that those who underestimated them no longer existed. They decided to approach humanity with respect on Earth. In the rebuilt city of Seoul, a grandmother sat with her grandchildren. They gathered around her as the sun set, eager to hear the old stories. She had been young when the invasion began. She had fought in the resistance, survived the war, and watched humanity rise to power. "Tell us the story again," her grandson begged. "Tell us about the day the aliens came." The grandmother smiled and began to speak. She told them about the fire from the sky. She told them about the death and the destruction. She told them about the brave soldiers who fought back, the brilliant scientists who created new weapons, the stubborn leaders who refused to surrender. She told them about Park Hannah, the Death Wind, about Kim Tae, the weapon maker, about Lee Soo, the supreme commander, about Ko Young, the first admiral, about all the heroes who saved humanity when everything seemed lost. The children listened with wide eyes. To them, the invasion was ancient history, something that happened before they were born. But they understood why the story mattered. "Remember this," the grandmother said, as stars appeared in the darkening sky. "The universe thought we were prey. They thought we were weak, divided, easy to destroy. They attacked us without mercy and expected us to die. But we did not die. We fought back. We survived. We conquered. And now we rule the stars." She pointed upward, where human ships patrolled the heavens. "Those ships protect us. They guard every human world. They remain. The galaxy that we are not prey. We are not weak. We are the predators now, and we always will be." Her grandchildren nodded solemnly. They understood. Humanity had paid a terrible price for its place among the stars. They would never forget the sacrifice. They would never let it happen again. Above them, the stars shone bright. Worlds that had once belonged to enemies now belonged to humanity. Ships that had once been dreams now carried humans across the galaxy. A future that had once seemed impossible now stretched endlessly before them. Humanity had been given a choice 20 years ago. Extinction or dominion. Surrender or war. They had chosen war. They had chosen vengeance. They had chosen survival at any cost, and they had won. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Some species whispered warnings to each other. Never attack Earth. Never threaten humanity. Never give them a reason to fight. Because if you gave humanity a reason to fight, they would never stop until you were destroyed. It was a lesson written in the ashes of fallen empires. It was a lesson the galaxy would never forget.